we must believe that we is better than me. I'm going to say that again right now. See, I know I'm hitting y'all. I know I'm doing it, but let me tell you something. I want the type of relationship that people be like, man, what's going on? I want that, right? So in order now for us to fight, to unite, we must believe that we as a couple is better than me as an individual. So let me give you the goal of this point. Let me give it to you right up front so you won't wonder what I'm talking about. The goal is to show you the power of a unified marriage versus the weakness of a selfish marriage. I just showed you the prosperity that comes from a united marriage. Now what I want to do is show you the power side of a unified marriage. So we're going to look at a story in Genesis. You've heard the story before, but I want to point out some biblical principles and some practical things that unity looks like, and then you can see the power that comes from it. This is now when God the people in the land decided they were going to build a tower up to heaven. And so the Bible says in Genesis chapter 11, I'm starting in verse 1, I'm reading out of the King James Version. It says, the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. That's interesting because you can have one language but be saying something completely different. He says, and it came to pass. Now, before I keep reading, I want you to pay attention to something. I want you to pay attention of how many times the word we, they, and us is used. And while we're talking and reading, I also want you to look at if the word me is ever used. Look at this in verse 2. It says, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain or some land in Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, go to and let us make some brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and slime, and they for mortar. And they said, go now, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach heaven, and let us make a name for us, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And watch this. After that, the Bible says, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men were building. Verse 6. And the Lord said, stop, who's talking? The Lord said, behold, the people are one. They are in unity. They are unified. They're on the same page. He said, and because of that, they all have one language. And this they begin to do. And watch what the Lord said about these unified people. He says, and nothing will be restrained from them that they have imagined to do. I wonder what would happen if a Christian, Bible-believing, Jesus Christ accepting couple would stop and die to themselves and get together and get on the same page and begin to dream and begin to speak the same thing. What would God do in their relationship? So here's some principles. There are some principles and practices that I want to pull out of this story that you and I can use in our relationship that I believe will help you get in unity and stay in unity as a couple. Everybody say, we is always better than me. Now, here are a couple of questions. Did you notice how many times they use the words us, they, and we? Listen, in 6 verses, because that's all we read, those 3 pronouns were used 16 times. Did you notice that we never read the word me? Because, see, it wasn't about them individually. It was about them as a couple or as a group in that sense. I'm talking about us as a couple. And when you are married, you must value unity more than disunity. You must value togetherness over separateness. See, once your way, everybody say my way. Once your way or your opinion or your actions are more important than the peace and the prosperity that comes with unity, yourself has just become your God. You say, I don't know about that, Pastor Ed, but let me ask you a question. Do you think it's God's will for us as couples to be unified? Absolutely. Do you think it's God's will for there to be discontentment and struggle and issues and problems on a consistent level? No. Okay, so that means you and I, we must value not only God's principles, but we must value them enough to insert them in how we function in our relationship. Why? Because God's way is going to always be better than our way. But see, if we decide to supersede God's way so that we can have our way, then we have just become a God in ourselves. You might as well stop praying to Him and pray to yourself. I want you to notice that they all spoke the same language, and they also spoke the same speech. In other words, they were unified in what language they used, and they were also unified, watch this now, church, in what they decided to say. Genesis 11:1, I'm going to go back to it. It says the whole earth was of one language and one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east. I want you to notice that they journeyed from the east. In other words, they all decided to be united and agreed to leave from the east. Nobody said, well, I don't want to go. I want to stay. I feel the Lord wants us to stay. No, the Bible says they. Everybody say they. They all decided to journey from the east. Amos 3:3 says, can two walk together except they be agreed? I love the New Living Translation. It says, can two people walk together without agreeing on the same direction? This group of people, and I don't know how many of them it was, but I'm pretty sure it was more than two. So you mean to tell me this huge group of people who decided to build a tower to reach up to heaven, that big old group of people has more unity than two of you? It says in verse 2 that they found some land and they decided to dwell there. They all decided, everybody say everybody. Everybody decided to stay and live in the same place. Do you see how much unity is going on here? And then verse 3 says, and they said to one another, go, let us make some brick. And they had some brick. And then they said, let's go and build a tower. I want you to notice that every decision, every direction, and every discovery was united. In other words, everything was a we thing and not a me thing. And that's how you experience the blessings of the Lord in your relationship. It has to become a we thing and not a me thing. And that's the problem. A lot of us may have grown up, and our parents, if we had two of them in the house, we didn't see a we thing. We saw two people with me things. In some cases, it was such a me thing. Papa was a Rolling Stone. He had 2 and 3 families going on. Sounds like we got kids from the Rolling Stone. One of the main things that kept this group unified is the very thing that God had to remove from them. He didn't remove their ability to talk, but He did remove their ability to communicate. And see, listen, that's the problem, which I'm going to talk about next week. It's communication. Because, see, you can have the same language, but not be saying the same thing. See,